Hello folks, Frank here, and this is Miscellaneous Ramblings. This past weekend in Washington, D.C., the Tea Party held a huge gathering. This had been organized by Glenn Beck and was billed as a non-political rally to restore honor to America. It was held on the 47th anniversary of the Civil Rights March that culminated on the Mall, and at which the Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. The next day, on Fox News Sunday, Mr. Beck gave an interview at which he claimed he had no idea that his rally had been scheduled for the anniversary of Dr. King's speech. He further went on to state that his rally was reclaiming the civil rights movement for people of faith. I'd like to point out to Mr. Beck that the people of faith he represents, conservative evangelical Christians, well, without their complicity, there would never have been a need for a civil rights movement at all. It was conservative Christians in the Bible Belt who enacted Jim Crow laws, who used segregation to deny black people everything from public accommodations to public schools, down to restrooms and water fountains. But Mr. Beck and the Tea Party movement seem to have no compunction about rewriting history to suit their own narrow political needs. It wasn't Christian conservatives who led the civil rights movement. It was the NAACP, progressive Americans in league with activist judges who dismantled the segregationist South. Cases such as the famous Brown versus the Board of Education, which, after it had made it through the Supreme Court, mandated that the schools in Little Rock, Arkansas be desegregated. It was Christian conservatives who stood in the way of this and made it necessary for National Guard troops to be deployed to protect school children trying to exercise their right to a good education. It was Christian conservative groups like the KKK that killed civil rights workers, bombed schools, did everything they could to stop black people from getting their civil rights. It wasn't conservative churches that went south to ensure people of color were registered to vote. No, it was liberal churches and progressive northerners who went south and made sure that black people's rights were not trampled upon again. The demagogues of the segregationist movement, all who claim to be good conservative Christians, people like George Wallace, Strom Thurmond, and Lester Maddox, did everything they could to impede the desegregation of the South. And yet, today the Tea Party movement, people like Glenn Beck, claim the mantle of the civil rights movement for themselves. How more disingenuous could they be? But Glenn Beck is no dummy. He knows that if his movement is to become very popular, he can't let it espouse its true character. That's why, in claiming that this rally was non-political, he asked the Tea Party members attending not to bring any signs. Now, if you look at any past Tea Party rallies and the signs that they carry, they seem to be incapable of any kind of self-censoring. They let all their vitriol spew out on these signs. And if they had brought their sign to this rally on the mall, well, their racism, homophobia, and religious intolerance would have been on display for a national audience to see. And this is the last thing that Glenn Beck wanted. So, no signs were brought to the rally. But if you just do a quick YouTube search, you can find many interviews with people on the mall that day, and they have no compunction at all about expressing their horrible views to the camera. But this kind of demagoguery that Glenn Beck uses, the dividing of people in order to try to get some sort of political gain, nothing new in American politics. You can look to Father Coughlin or Joe McCarthy. They use the same tactics that Mr. Beck is using. Mr. Beck seems to be a little more savvy in the way he does this. But, just like other demagogues in American political history, I think that Mr. Beck will get his comeuppance. Because the American people will realize what's going on and reject him and his Tea Party movement, realizing it for what it is. Well, he really had to say today. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you next time. Frank out.